welcome everybody. We're so glad you could join us today. We're excited to do this webinar on improving customer engagement with modern experience platforms. We're going to go through introductions to the speakers and who we are as an XNET in just a second. Let's kick it off as people are joining with a quick view at the agenda. David, if you could forward. So we got a lot to talk about today, and we also have some fun that we're going to have together today. So we're really excited about this. The agenda today, as I said, we'll do introductions. We're going to kind of talk about what we mean when we use the term business experience, which we'll use a bunch during this webinar today. What does that mean, and or what, at least what do we mean by it? And then we'll talk about what an experience-oriented architecture looks like, because that paves the way to move into a section on what are the technology platforms that can power a really robust, modern, experience-oriented architecture. So that's kind of the meat of today's informative presentation. And then if you like what you hear, number 5 there is we'll talk to you a little bit about how to get started. What are some good ways, if you think that this is interesting to you or your business, to potentially get going on looking deeper at this. We'll take some questions at the end, and then we want to move into the fun with a unique thing we're doing today, which is a wine tasting for those of you who receive kits. So that's the agenda. Let's why don't we jump to introductions, David? So yeah, hello again, everyone. I'm Steve Tranchita. I'm the Vice President of Digital Solutions. The company is called XNET, and I'm joined here with my colleague, David Lavin. David, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is David Lavin. I'm an enterprise architect with the XNET Solutions Group.
And David and I are happy to have Caroline Davis joining us towards the end of this webinar, and she's going to be our master of ceremonies for the fun wine tasting portion of this. Right, jump ahead to the next one. So we're an XNET. We've been in business for over 20 years, and we do 4 main things at an XNET, as you see on this slide here. And coincidentally or not, those 4 things are kind of all the major ingredients that we believe are required to be what we call a great business experience company. And those 4 things are, well, customer experience, right? We help our clients provide better experiences for their customers across the entire customer journey through solutions and technologies that we bring to bear. One of which we're going to talk a lot about today, which is this concept of a digital experience platform. And then the second thing that we do is we help you kind of turn inward and look at your enterprise internally and help you modernize and get more optimized and use technology intelligently inside your walls with your workforce to enable them with tools that they need to provide optimization through automation and orchestration, and to make sure that you're secure and running smoothly as well. Number 3, we really believe strongly that data and analytics are foundational to being a great experience company. And so we have a whole practice dedicated to what we call applied intelligence. And the reason we call it that is, we firmly believe it's the application of that data. It's the way that you apply the analytics and the insights from that data to either your employee systems or your customer-facing systems in order to really be a great business experience company. And that includes, traditional things like operational analytics, your classic BI. It includes getting a customer 360, complete portfolio of intelligence around your customers and keep that information up to date in real time, right? What we call customer 360. And it also includes advanced analytics with things like AI and machine learning, which is predictive and prescriptive. The last piece of our business, and we have a whole business unit dedicated to this, is around cloud and infrastructure. And we do some reselling in there also. And so, what are the underlying core platforms that are going to power your software? Going to power the things that we're going to talk about today, like the DXPs. We can help you with that from an underlying infrastructure, end-to-end standpoint there. So that's who we are as an XNET. Like I said, we've been doing it a long time, and we're really happy to have you joining us today. Next slide is, so that's kind of a little bit of the who. That last slide there, this just real quick, this is kind of the what, if you will, or I'm sorry, the how we do it, if you will. And the key thing here, everyone, is that We believe in being strategy-led, first of all. So that means that if you see something you like today and you think you might want to learn more about it, we can advise you on these things. We have a methodology, we have a set of accelerators to help you really embark on the right path with whatever business technology initiatives you might have. And that will lead into your kind of traditional design phases, anything you need to procure or acquire as part of the solution, to the build phase, the engineering piece. And then finally, ongoing managed services, maintenance and support. We provide kind of this end-to-end view here. All right, so that's our quick commercial about an XNET. The other thing, as part of any good consultancy, we align ourselves with some really great partners, and we have actually dozens of partnerships, but bubbling up some of the top ones you see here are kind of key partners of ours, and kind of the bookends, two of them on the bookends of this, Adobe and Salesforce, we are going to touch upon today because they're players in the digital experience platform space. They're really strong players. And so as we talk about the architecture of a DXP, David's going to help you understand kind of what Adobe brings to the table with respect to that technology componentry, and same with Salesforce. Okay, so we throw around this term a lot at an XNET called business experience, and the question is, what does that mean? And for us, it's really kind of a broader way of thinking about traditional customer experience. So it goes beyond just kind of optimizing touch points, which the core tenets of customer experience are really well understood at this point, but people still struggle like crazy to consistently provide great experiences for their customers over and over again, for a lot of different reasons. And we think the biggest reason is that when a customer has a great experience with you and your business, we don't look at that as like a surface level event. It's all the stuff beneath the surface that had to come together to really produce that great event and to produce the next one and the next one after that. So there's a lot of pieces to your organization that really need to tightly intertwine and work together and get integrated, most especially your systems, but also kind of your departments and the way they think about their role in the experience. Kind of all needs to come together. And that spirit of how does a person feel after they've interacted with you and your business, that's the essence of business experience. And to make that repeatable, we feel that this is really a kind of a holistic endeavor beyond just the actual touch points themselves, which are really important, and we'll talk a lot about those today. But we tried to encapsulate that in this kind of this picture that you see here. So top of the chain is the actual interactions and the customer experience, right? And putting the customers at the center of everything you do. Applying innovation and building really engaging digital platforms for them to engage with you. But in doing so, you have to have a great understanding of your customers, and that understanding has to continually evolve. And that's where the applied intelligence kind of mirrors that customer experience triangle in this picture, which is every interaction is driven by intelligence, things about your customer, things about their segment, their category. And then there's a couple other pieces here that kind of often either get worked on in silos. We see that a lot, or get sort of de-emphasized in the funding prioritization and the roadmap prioritization. The first one is employee experience. Inherently, you're not going to consistently provide great customer experiences if your employees aren't thrilled to do what they're doing, right? If they're not empowered with the tools and the information that they need to do their jobs, that's going to be a cog in the wheel when it comes to consistently providing great experiences for your customers and your partners. So we do think that needs to be part of the integrated conversation there. And then, streamlining your operations. If a middle office or back office system is the bottleneck in a long-running kind of onboarding process, let's just say, for a customer or some other experience that they're having with you, the overall score or the overall feeling for that experience is going to suffer dramatically and probably disproportionately to the one stage of the journey where you had a bottleneck in operations, right? We see that a lot. And so, applying automation intelligently, streamlining your operations, those are all kind of beneath the surface things that we believe you have to focus on in a coordinated fashion with your customer experience. And of course, being a technology company, we have a strong belief that your technology systems that surround all of those inner colored triangles are really crucial and often one of the biggest inhibitors to great digital experience. And so that's really the subject of today's webinar. I think you tease it up pretty nicely there, that the digital business platforms, the technology systems, and the way that they power all the pieces of those inner colored triangles, that's going to make you stand out as a great experience company. Now, we think whatever industry you're in, folks, doesn't matter. You're all in the experience business in this day and age, right? Regardless of industry. And if one of your customers interacts with a different business in a totally different industry from yours, but has kind of a cool experience that they like, they're no longer going to think about that just in that one industry. It's going to jump, that expectation is going to jump industries into your industry as well, and they're going to expect to have the same experience. So again, regardless of industry, you're in the experience business, and that's really what is going to drive sustainable growth, customer lifetime value, loyalty, and success moving forward. Okay, next slide. And this is kind of the last kind of introductory or business level slide before we get into that digital experience platform piece that we're going to talk about. But again, I can't emphasize it enough, folks, that I think the entire business has to rally around the concept of being an experience company, right? That's the essence of BX. And it starts with saying, what is the primary kind of mission and purpose of your company? And make sure that you're all internal unified on that vision and purpose, because that's really the foundation of this whole thing. If you look at the great business experience companies today, they kind of have that rallying cry about their vision and purpose in life. And then, I'll jump right to that third bullet there. One of the key things here is transforming your organization into a listening organization, right? You're constantly listening and analyzing what's going on in the market, what your customers are doing, what you're hearing from them, and you're constantly looking for unmet needs in the customer journey. And when you find kind of an opportunity to fulfill an unmet need, you want to apply deep innovation, apply the latest technology and cool stuff that maybe you're seeing in another industry, like an Amazon or something else. But look at those trends that are happening in and outside your industry to apply innovation to where your customers can benefit greatly. And that's an ongoing, continuous cycle. And again, it's a holistic approach. Make experience everybody's business in your company, from the front office, to sales and marketing and service, to supply chain. All those behind the scenes things really have to come together for you to have a sustainable, great business experience company. And a key piece of that, the subject of today's webinar, is kind of the underlying technology platforms. This goes hand in hand with the business architecture, by the way, which is why I wanted to spend some time on it, because what we see a lot is one of those groups, whether it's sales, marketing, service desk, they have their own systems and their own processes, and they're kind of siloed. And then you have another area of the business that has their own technology components, maybe from a totally different vendor, and not as tightly integrated with the rest of the pieces of the organization or the pieces of the puzzle I showed you earlier. And that's a real inhibitor. So a holistic approach, including with technology, and that's kind of my lead into the architectural side of this. I'm going to turn it over to our enterprise architect, David Lavin, to take it from here.
All right, thanks, Steve. So when we start to think about how we can deliver these kinds of experiences, the first step that we think through is, what does that look like from a, start with the requirements. How does it need to behave? What are the facets of the aspects of such an architecture that are key to successfully delivering these kinds of experiences? And for us, the key five are the ones we have listed here. And I'm going to start at the top left and kind of move clockwise. And as you might expect, responsiveness and speed is a key aspect that the architecture has to meet. And it's not just, I think for a long time, as Steve was saying, people thought about customer experience, they think about the touch points with the customers, and they want to make sure they have certain response times from the websites or the mobile apps. And that's certainly part of it. And Steve's right, the expectations there are only increasing and they're crossing industry boundaries. But that's also true of those employee-facing systems as well. That business experience, relates to the tools that the employees have at their hands to fulfill those operational processes and interact with the customer data, and sometimes even with the customer. The example I always think of is, I'm sure everybody's had the experience of being on a call with some kind of support line for whatever company, and having the rep apologize, sorry, the system's slow, I'm still trying to pull up your data. And that has an impact on your feelings and relationships with that company as much as your interactions with the websites and whatnot. So that's a key aspect of it. The next is around integration. Obviously, the data needs to flow between the different touch points, both customer facing and employee facing, at scale, minimum latency. It has to be real time. Going back to that example I just had, if you're interacting with a call center rep and they're making changes in their system, if customers would expect if they go to the website right then while they're on the call, they're going to see those changes, and getting told, oh, it'll take 24 hours or an hour or however long for those changes to move from system to system. Again, it has an impact on the overall experience and how you think about your relationship with that company. Multi-channel. Again, I think this has been pretty common in terms of the customer experience needs, in terms of the touch points, whether it's web, mobile, whatever those touch points might be. But again, the overall business experience demands, sometimes it's not just what the touch points for the customers, but it's for the employee. Can the employee be as effective in the office on a laptop as they are on say a field services call with a mobile device? Obviously, security is a big aspect of this, and I think that everybody is aware these days of kind of the brand integrity aspects of keeping data secure. But obviously, over the last several years, the compliance aspects of this have also enhanced in terms of GDPR and California privacy, and just all of the ways that consumers are getting more control of their data and being able to protect their privacy. The architecture obviously needs to support that. And then in terms of how the architecture kind of constructs itself is around this composability, this ability to mix and match capabilities from different aspects, whether it's making the CRM and the marketing work together with the commerce engine, with the website, those kinds of things. So everything is linked in such a way that it works seamlessly together. And I think what we're seeing is that one of the driving technology trends we're seeing in delivering this kind of architecture is around these digital experience platforms. And I want to talk a little bit about that. What we're seeing is these digital experience platforms are really this integrated suite of tools and capabilities that enables that kind of experience-oriented architecture. And just to talk a little bit about kind of the evolution of this technology space, most of the product offerings that you're going to see talk about being a digital experience platform grew up through content management and web experience management. So whether you're talking Adobe or LifeRay or Acquia, all the different vendors kind of grew up as focusing on those touch points, those interface touch points with the customers. And now they're growing into this digital experience platform that brings this more holistic picture together of managing all these touch points. And that's ironically, you talk about it being a digital experience platform, the evolution is actually less about the front end interface or those touch points and more about the back end. And that's kind of what we want to talk through in today's architectures is how these platforms has evolved. And we're going to kind of go through that in just a little bit. But the real goal is to let this platform manage the customer journey from end to end. And that's from, you've got the marketing pieces on the front end in terms of you're drawing awareness and interest and then you're getting into the commerce solutions that lets them interact with it, understand the pricing and the support aspects, and then getting into support and repurchasing and really supporting the customer throughout that journey. Now, I do want to be clear, this doesn't mean that such a platform is a monolithic platform that does all of these things. Obviously, many vendors that are in this space will tell you, well, we have things that'll do the marketing tech, and we have a commerce platform, and we have a CRM, and we have the support service, and we can do the front end. But I would say the crux of a DXP is not about getting onto a single vendor that manages all this for you. It's about having a platform that's flexible enough to, yes, bring some of those capabilities to the table, but also you can kind of plug and play with other best of breeds or even custom built capabilities from your own organization and enable this kind of activity. And it's all built on this sense of the complete 360 view of the customers as it's managed by your data. So that data that's coming from your marketing systems or your CRMs or the commerce systems and other places that allows you to get that 360 degree view. And this is where, I talked about just a minute ago, the evolution of these DXP platforms. This is how they're turning those web experience management platforms into more holistic digital experience platforms. It's all about this data. And it's all about the ability to use this data to drive what we call here intelligent actions. And that's around taking that information of not only what they're doing on your commerce site or what they're looking at on your website, interaction and sentiment or feedback from your service areas, and combining that with whatever context makes sense for your business in terms of time of year, time of day, whatever it might be, and understanding, okay, this is what my customers are doing, and being able to analyze that through an analytics capability and leverage that to drive these intelligent actions across these touch points. And then not only that, but to gather the results of that and feed it back into that data layer, so this becomes a cyclical capability. So Steve talked about earlier about being a listening organization, and that's what these DXPs are really starting to do in terms of their evolution over the last few years. They started off as very much about ways to publish to a customer, and now they're transitioning to also listen to what's going on and use that to drive a better, more personalized approach to how they communicate out. And for us, that's really about, when we talk about digital experience architecture, that's the crux of it. So when we think about how we use that data to drive that architecture, and we think about what a DXP reference architecture looks like, this is our view of a digital experience architecture. And I'm going to go through this for a couple of minutes, and I want to focus first on kind of the center, pillar down the middle here. And I want to start at the top. So when you talk about the interaction services, I mean, these are just what you would expect. These are the pieces that know how to interact with the different kinds of touch points and kind of facilitate that interaction, whether it's through web or mobile or even IVR, conversational AI, all the aspects that allow you to interact with a human. And then behind that is the content management capabilities that are all about shaping those interactions, being able to author and publish and do A/B testing and enable localization and other kinds of personalization that go on in that. And if you think about it, these, the top two parts are really about, I talk about that history of a DXP. That's where most of them came from. This was their bread and butter, is managing a lot of these kinds of interactions, definitely around that content management in terms of this is what the information we're presenting, and this is what we're trying to drive to our customers and our employees. Behind that is really what is the evolving space, and it's about having that kind of a more of a consolidated view within a data lake or whatever you want to call that structure, and different vendors do it different. But having a consolidated profile information down there about users and how they interact with you from the different touch points and the different types of interactions you have across that journey, driving it through the analytics, and then using that kind of audience management capability to segment and personalize, manage preferences and consents, and just having that overall connectivity of the profile. And then around all of that is a robust integration capability that starts to bring in those other services that drive across the journey. So you've got the marketing services around campaign management or social media interactions or other communications, email campaigns, whatever you might be doing, and how that flows in, those touch points flow in. But then you also have the commerce services in terms of what product catalogs are available that they're interacting with, and obviously cart and checkout and order management, payment services and loyalty services, and all those kinds of things that go into a commerce platform. But when you can bring those together, into this kind of robust, user data profile management capability, and use that to drive the content management and interaction services, that's where the real power comes from. And of course, on the top right, security is always an aspect of this. So being able to manage that identity, manage the right authentication and authorization, and even single sign-on across entities is key, because, as I said before, not all of these might be sitting on the same platform. And so this, like I said, this is our view of when we say a digital experience platform, what we mean. And it's all these aspects that drive this interaction across the journey. And so what I wanted to do is maybe also walk through, how does this apply to some of the leading DXP vendors? And I want to specifically, want to talk to two that Steve mentioned earlier, because we are partners with Adobe and Salesforce. So I thought it might be useful to talk about how this overlays with their product suites, because I think the two vendors actually came at this this market, this space from different directions. And it's interesting to see how they've kind of both moved into the same kind of capability, but from those different directions. So let's start with Adobe. As most folks know, Adobe's kind of bread and butter was very much around content creation, more in the marketing space. Obviously, they've expanded through acquisitions of companies like Magento for commerce and things like that. But they're very much started in that creation, marketing, website management space, and I think you see that in how their digital experience platform capability has evolved. It all rotates around Adobe Experience Manager, and then they back that up with newer offerings around a customer data platform that's driven by their Sensei kind of AI and machine learning capability, and also Adobe Analytics. And on top of that, you've got the ability to target and do other audience management and segmentation that can drive Experience Manager. And then what they've done is they've built integration capabilities around that to connect to their marketing cloud, but also to their commerce cloud, which was what they acquired from Magento, so that they're starting to build in how you could drive experiences based on interactions, say, with a commerce platform and whatnot. So it's, as you can see, it's very much along the lines of the reference architecture we were just going through. It's kind of Adobe's flavor of it, and I think this is very similar. I mentioned other vendors, kind of like LifeRay or Acquia. These are very similar companies that, again, came from that web experience management, more kind of content creation and delivery aspects, and are starting to fill out more of the kind of the consumer data and analytics capabilities in order to drive that in a more intelligent way. Now, Salesforce is slightly different, because Salesforce came at this more from kind of what I consider the core 4 pillars of Salesforce's offering, which is Sales Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud, and Service Cloud. And what they instead came up with is we have companies using this, and they're interacting, or we've got customer data across all these pillars. We can bring that together, and we can use it to drive these kind of experiences through what they've rebranded as Experience Cloud, which used to be, I believe it was Community Cloud. It was more of a collaboration tool that allowed you to build, small websites and things like that. But they've really enhanced that over the last few years to be more of an experience platform. And what they're doing, technically, is slightly different than Adobe. They have a Customer 360 data manager down there that's pulling this data together, but it's not doing it in a physical way. There's not a big database like there is in, Adobe has a data lake. Salesforce, it's more of a virtual connectivity, and the data stays within those pillars: Commerce Cloud, Sales Cloud, Marketing Cloud. It gets pulled in from an integration perspective into these capabilities around Einstein and analytics, and driving their things like Interaction Studio and Audience Studio that allows you to segment and target and drive the interactions and how you want to think about those interactions with your customers, and then push those through Experience Cloud. So again, a slightly different kind of path to get here, but as you can see, the capabilities start to look very similar. And I think you'll see the same in other vendors. We're not talking about what we're talking, maybe something like Bloomreach, which came from more of a commerce play, or the other ones that are more like Adobe and came from a content management play. You see you see very similar. All of them, you'll see some sense of a customer data platform. You'll see some sense of an analytics capability driving that content management. So I guess the main message that we would have is, when you're thinking about the digital experience platforms or really driving a business experience oriented architecture in general, it's actually less about the interfaces and more about the data. If you can get and orchestrate that data across customer journey, that is more than half the battle to delivering a good experience. And that's really kind of where you need to focus. And I think there's multiple tools and ways to do that. Like I said, you can build some of your own. You can combine it with some of the vendor offerings. But the trick is getting that integrated view and driving the experience from that. So with that, I think Steve, I'll spin it back over to you. Unless you want to add anything to that, we can talk about kind of how we can help folks get started.
Yeah, no, I think that was great, David. Thank you. And yeah, as you pointed out, I think the holy grail of these DXPs more and more has become the ability to move data seamlessly through all these different components. Something like Adobe gives you a way to do it in batch, but they also have, for example, Kafka under the cover so that the data can be streamed in real time across these different pieces. And the ability to listen to signals, meaning data collected externally and directly from your customers, and flow it through an analytics engine to, as David said, be able to predict next best action. If a customer calls the service desk, you know that they're halfway through an online workflow and maybe stuck. You already know that because the data is flowing in real time. That's really kind of the holy grail that is really gluing these kind of next wave of digital experience platforms together. So that's, with that said, hopefully this is interesting to you, and you can draw some kind of thoughts against your own organization where you are. And a common question is, well, okay, great. What's kind of a way to get started? And if you go to the next slide, David, this is something that I mentioned earlier when I said, not the what we do, but how we do it. We'd like to be strategy led. And so in that strategy phase, we have a series of accelerators. And one of them is our digital experience platform, which uses our Kickstart methodology. It's intended to be worded that way because this is a rapid way to get your company going on a path and on a defensible roadmap towards building or implementing a more modern kind of DXP ecosystem, the likes of what David just took you through. And so it's not rocket science. There's three major pieces to our Kickstart approach. One is, just some basic direction setting and information gathering around where's your business going, what are your major business drivers and needs, who are your customers, How well do you know them today? And how, what's your strategy for improving engagement with them if you have one already? And what's your current state? You probably have a chunk of these pieces, or at least some of them, already stood up. What are they? How connected are they? What are the different pieces involved? So we look at that, and that's kind of our starting point there for looking at the future. And we roll into that in step 2, which is let's build you a vision for a more modern, more integrated set of integrated technology components to complete that reference architecture that David showed you, that is very customized to what your business needs. And that will include things like, let's look at the market leaders out there for things that we really shouldn't be building from scratch, because these DXP platforms have gotten so much more mature and continue to get better. Let's look at like a Pew matrix of capabilities. That's a common thing we do in these strategy sessions, to say, for your organization, here's some here's the way that certain components from certain vendors align really well with what you need. Here's where your business is so unique that you might struggle to shoehorn it into one of these off-the-shelf components. All those things kind of come together in this step 2 here to define kind of what a future state DXP would look like for your organization. And then finally, how do you get there? So where point A is, where point Z is, but how do you build a roadmap of phases that demonstrate business value at each point to get to that goal? And that's step 3, which is we do a readout with key stakeholders in your organization on our recommendations, our next steps, and a phased roadmap that we think makes a lot of sense for you guys to work towards that target architecture and target set of platforms that we've come up with. There you go. We got you. Yeah.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you both. Thanks, Steve. Thank you, David. My name is Caroline. I'm a wine tasting host with In Good Taste Wines. And today we're going to be tasting this patented little mini bottle that you have in front of you today. This is our Wild Child kit. So this is a selection of some of our lesser known varieties. Maybe you've had them once or twice. Maybe you've never had them before. So for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to be exploring some of these varieties together. They're all grown here in California, but most of them are better known from the old world, from Europe. So I'll talk to where they come from as well. But most important things first, let's get some wine in glasses. This is a wine tasting. So go ahead and pour yourself some La Pluma Vermantino. Also, as you're pouring, you probably realize there is plastic on these bottles. So go ahead and pick off all the plastic now. I promise this is the most boring part, the hardest part of the tasting. But when you're 7 glasses in, trying to pick off the plastic from the 8, it gets invisible really quick. So do that now. And as you're pouring, I'll address the wine elephant in the room, which is, this is a lot of wine. 8 mini bottles equals 2 full wine bottles. So I'm not going to recommend you try to drink 2 full bottles in an hour. We recommend pouring a quarter to a half. That's still going to give you a half to a full wine bottle of drinking by the end of this. So do as you will. Just know that I'm the bad guy that's going to be moving you on to drink more wine. So if you do pour a hefty pour, you're going to have to decide what to do about it. All right, so while you're picking some plastic and pouring yourself some Vermentino, I'll tell you a little bit about In Good Taste Wines. So we are a winery based in Sonoma, California, and we make wines from all over the world. So our grapes will grow all over the world, and we'll bring the grape juice back to Sonoma and finish the wine process there. Our goal with our patented little mini bottle and our tasting kits is really to get people out of their comfort zone, expand your palate, maybe teach you about a wine that you didn't know about and that you didn't know you liked. So if you find any wines that you like today, we sell all of these in a 6-pack of the little mini bottles. And we're doing a little promotion where if you get a 6-pack, you'll get a cool aerator. He's a little stag head. I'll send that to you at the end when you're a little more tipsy and more likely to buy. And then until then, we'll just drink some fun wine. So, all right, here's our really formal agenda for this. We're gonna drink some wine and have fun. On your end, it's really what you want to make of it. If y'all want to just sit back and hear me talk and sip your wine, awesome. If you have questions and you want to get into the nitty-gritty of wine, ask away. Throw them in the chat, throw them in the questions, and we'll talk wine. We'll get into it. On my end, really, my goal is to try to help you understand why. Why are you like this and not this? Why are you hating this wine, but liking this one? Give you some terms and words to help you understand and voice what you're experiencing. So, all right, with that said, let's jump into our first wine. This is the Pluma Vermantino. And let's see. I was seeing if I could post them to you, but I'll just show the bottles, might make it easier. So yes, this is our first one, the Pluma Vermantino. For this one, we are going to do a framework called the 5 S's. So this is a good framework to help you understand how to approach a bottle of wine, how to speak about a glass of wine. So 5 S's, they all start with S. They're all verbs related to wine. Does anyone have any ideas what they might be? Throw them in the chat. And we'll see if anyone's got some ideas. The 5 S's is a great one for just already looking like you know what you're talking about in a bar, at a wine bar. So we've got, I'll do them in order for you. See, swirl, sniff, sip, and savor. So those are our 5 S's. And we'll go through with this Vermantino to help you see how you use it. So we're going to start with C. So hold up your glass of Vermantino and give it a look. Look at what color you're seeing. Try to think about the color in the glass. So this is pretty light. You're probably looking at it thinking, what color is this? There's not much going on here. And that's fine. So a good rule of thumb with wine is the more saturated the color, the more intense the flavor. So you know just from looking at it that this is going to be a nice light wine. And we're right. So Vermantino, for those of you who have not heard of this, is very similar to a Sauvignon Blanc. It's a light-bodied white grape. It grows in Italy. This one was grown in California, but we actually have only 100 acres of it growing in California. So it's really rare here. So there you go. You already know something from seeing it. And then we'll go to our swirl. Hold up your glass, swirl along with me. You look fancy for a little bit. Why do we do this? What is the point of swirling? Other than to look really fancy. So we do this to aerate the wine. So by doing this, we're exposing more of the alcohol to oxygen. A little bit evaporates off. It's going to release aromas. So we're doing this to prepare ourselves for the sniff step. So you did some swirls, and you stick your nose in there. So we're on to our 3rd S, sniff. So stick your nose in there, give it a sniff, and then think about what you're smelling. Usually the thing that pops in your head first, just you go with it. What's interesting with smelling wine is wine's so subjective. What you're going to smell compared to what someone else is going to smell, it's based on your life experiences. It's going to trigger memories from your past. So what I smell is going to be very different than what you smell. So,
Caroline, we have a question.
Oh, yes.
Okay. What do you think about putting ice in wine in the hot summer months?
Ooh, so great. The only risk with putting ice in is it can dilute it if you're not drinking it fast enough. It's really hot out. So what you could do instead is frozen grapes. I always suggest that for people who like that. You know, you're not thinking in advance to put it in the freezer. I always forget to chill it in advance. So you just chuck some frozen grapes in. But really at the end of the day, it's how you like your wine. If you like it nice and cool, go ahead, put that ice in. But I like frozen grapes to help with the dilution of it.
That's a great idea.
In general, Americans tend to drink our reds too hot and our whites too cool. But that's why for this tasting, we recommended putting all of the kit in the fridge, and people are really surprised by that. Like, why are we cooling off the reds as well? So yes, white wines, most of those you can leave in the fridge. Reds, you would even put in for like an hour, 45 minutes before dinner and cool off a little too. It helps bring out some of those aromas and flavors. So, all right, that was a great question. Yes, keep sending them through. All right, so now we're sniffing, and I'll say on this one, so like I was saying, you're gonna smell whatever you've experienced, very subjective. What I'm gonna smell here is a lot of fresh flowers. This one's very herbaceous, right? You're not getting like these strong fruits jumping out at me. It just smells light, zippy. It just smells refreshing. So you can smell that maybe. So we'll take a sip. So when you take your sip, you want to swish it around in your mouth. You want to coat your whole tongue. If you ever see people sucking in or doing those movements, they're just aerating it more. They're doing this, they're getting those aromas in their mouth. They're bringing in more oxygen, and they're really just trying to coat everywhere. So take some sips. I know we already have, but this is our official sip now. And think about what you're tasting. So for this one, I get melon. You can feel that citrusy, little white pepper. It's quite nice. So when you're sipping, things to think about would be, is it dry? So a dry wine is the opposite of a sweet wine. It's a spectrum of sugar content. Most wines that you drink are dry, unless you're drinking like a Riesling or a port, you're seeking out a sweet wine. Most wines are dry. So every wine in this kit is a dry wine. Acidity. So think about biting into a lemon, and already you're feeling this pucker at the back of your mouth. That's acidity. That's how you feel for it in wine. So you're probably feeling it in this one, right? Take another sip. I don't know, I took that tiny sip and I still feel it back here. So you get that nice acidity. It's gonna really, Christmas balances the floral aromas in this one. So that's another thing you'll look for, more common in whites, is that acidity. And then when we get to the reds, we'll talk about tannins. And all these things together help you talk about the body of the wine. Light body, full bodied, heavy bodied. Basically, does it feel like water versus skim milk versus whole milk on your tongue? How heavy does it feel as you're drinking it? So already we've got some, we've got some tools in our toolkit. You know this is acidic. You can feel from the lightness, it's nice and light bodied. It's just a good summer drinking wine. So those are the 4 of the 5 S's, and the last one is savor. And really that means just take a pause before you take your next sip and see if you're still tasting it, even after you've sipped. Some of these wines will really linger, and a wine like that you could say has a long finish. So this one maybe not so much, but I'll point it out as we get into some of the other ones. So there we go. That was our Vermantino. Hope you'll like that one. And yeah, that's good spring, summer drinking. Pair that with anything fishy, herby, citrusy, nice light cheeses. This would go well with crab cakes. If anyone's following along on our pamphlet, or if you just want to review this later, there's some food pairings in here as well. Some serious ones and then some kind of funny, wild ones, because this is our wild shot. All right, we will move on to our next wine. This is the game theory, Gewürztraminer. Yeah, so a lot of words on there. So it's a V on that W pronunciation, German word, Gewürztraminer. So this one, German grape, was mostly grown in Austria. Now it's mostly known in Alsace region in France. But this one was grown, again, all of these were grown in California. This one was grown in Santa Barbara. So if you're switching glasses, no need to rinse with water. That'll actually dilute and affect the flavors. You could just, finish yours, pour a sip. If there's still any left, and you can swirl that to clear it out for your next one. So, all right, let's try some Gewürztraminer. Gewürz is German for spicy. And really what they mean by that isn't spicy, but aromatic, which you're probably realizing right now as you smell this one. For all of these wines, I like to give them a sniff before I swirl and then swirl them, or sniff, swirl, and then sniff again, and you'll really notice the difference of how much aroma it releases by swirling it. You smell after and you're like, whoa, that's coming out. So this one is incredibly pungent. It's very perfumey. It's almost like potpourri. Some people love that. Some people are like, whoa, that is a lot of flowers in one cup. So I'm curious if people are liking it or not. I would say in terms of smell, this is going to be similar to a Moscato. You might smell it and be thinking this is going to be really sweet based on that smell. But no, it's just those aromatics, just that perfume. Go ahead and give it a taste. And you'll see it's dry. I already told you that so you knew, but this is dry, so it's not going to have that sweeter heft to it. So the smell on this, like I said, really perfumey. You're going to get things like gardenia, tropical blossoms, lime. This grape actually has the same compound in it as lychee. So if anyone's ever had lychees before, I really noticed that. That really comes out for me. And then when you taste it, you get more of those tropical fruits. Very coastal, very tropical with it. Pineapple, and lemon. So this one's really nice. This is gonna be lower in acid. So if you were feeling that on that first one, that Vermantino, you can see on this one, it's kind of mellowed out a little. Not so acidic, but also a little heavier body as you're drinking it. You might be feeling a little more weight on your tongue with this one. So something like this would pair really well because of those strong aromatics. Would pair really well with a stinky cheese, like a Blue or a Munster, because the richness in the wine will really tame that cheese and the aromatics will balance it out. And also spicy food. So Indian or Thai, you'll actually often see Gewürztraminer on the menu at an Indian restaurant because they pair so well. Because these also can be sweet wines, the whole range of the spectrum. But even without the sweetness, this aromatic there is really nice to balance out the spiciness. So yeah, so this wine, Gewürztraminer, is often a good training wine for wine ID because of that really unique smell. So if you're ever wanting to do a blind wine tasting, this is a nice one. You smell that and you'll start to recognize it over time. Be like, I know what this is. This is Gewürztraminer. So there you go. So now we've done 2 of our wines. This one, just to compare them a little, more sweet, more tropical. That Vermentino more crisp, lighter, more acidic. But again, both of these are nice, light, day drinking wines. I'm gonna move us on to our next wine. And as I'm pouring it, I'll tell you a little bit about wine glasses. But first, go ahead, pour yourself some of this red label. This is our Mourvedre. You've maybe never heard of this before. If you have, I'm curious where you've come across it. But Mourvedre is typically not done as a single variety bottle. It's often done in blends. So anyways, as you're pouring your Mourvedre, we can talk about wine glasses. So, right, there's so many different wine glasses out there, all these different shapes. Which one are you supposed to use? I'll tell you. So white wine glasses, look at this one. This is kind of more of a medium in-betweener. But white wine glasses are on the shorter side, right? Compared to a red wine glass, it's like the big goblet, and it's so tall, it's like as big as your head. And that has to do with the aromatics, what you're smelling. So with white wine, a shorter distance to your nose so that you can really smell the delicate smells of that Vermentino. For a red, there's so much going on, there's so much stronger that you actually want a little more distance between you and the liquid, between you and the wine. And then the goblet is for the aerating, right? The aerator, the swirling, all of that, more surface area to open it up to really help oxidize those tannins and that alcohol a little more. So that's why you have a big open glass for a red versus for a white. You want to keep it nice and closed in because you want to keep those delicate aromas. And it also helps keep the temperature, right? Our whites will drink a little cooler than our reds, so that helps with the temperature. And that's why stems tend to be longer on a white wine glass too. We want to keep it cooler and not be heating it up with our hands. There you go. Or you just get one kind of in the middle if you don't want to swap around. But those are why we drink the different wine glass shapes. All right. Mourvedre. Fortune favors Mourvedre. This one was grown in San Francisco Bay. Almost said valley. Almost all valley. San Francisco Bay. And this is a Spanish origin grape. Now it's one of the major grapes in the Rhone Valley in France. So for those of you who have heard of it, Mourvedre, I mentioned it usually is in a blend. It's an M in GSM blend. So if you like GSM blends, if you've heard of that, they are Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvedre, and often from Côte d'Rhône, or from Rhone Valley. So if you hear of a Côte d'Rhône, often it's a GSM blend. And that is because, give it a sip, and you'll figure out pretty quickly, this Mourvedre is very high in tannins, very full-bodied, still pretty high in alcohol. We crept up in the high alcohol range early on, and we've stayed up there. So this is a really nice blend grape because it adds that oomph to the other ones, really kicks up the tannin and alcohol content. So some people drink this alone and they love it. And some of y'all might be drinking it and be like, whoa, that's too much. So depends on your taste. If you like big reds, you might like this alone. It is going to be similar to that Tempranillo. Right, we're still getting that jammy fruitiness, that black pepper spiciness. This was also done in oak. So again, smelling that sweetness, it's the toasty vanilla that's coming from the oak. But yeah, big, juicy, jammy, full body. You can tell I like reds. So that's nice. What's interesting, so this was grown in San Francisco. Yeah, Patty likes it too. Nice, nice. Good to discover a new wine. So this was grown in San Francisco. So it's got that nice hot climate. It's like outside of San Francisco. Any San Franciscans are calling me out on San Francisco being warm. So it's outside of San Francisco, nice, warm, and hot. But because of the bay, the breeze coming in, that cooling influence, it does keep some of its acidity. So it's always nice to be in balance with your wines, to have these acidity to balance these other things. So there's a lot going on here. But yeah, this is gonna go really well. Like quite a few of these heavy reds here, but roasted smoked dishes, really hearty sauces. So like beef short ribs, bacon, just rich foods. This would be able to handle it. And that's because there's a reason behind our food pairings. So, you know, you always hear red wine with red meat, white wine with fish. And you're like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. But why? Why do we do it? I think it always helps to know what the reason behind, rather than just memorizing a rule. And well, it has to do with tannins. So red wine goes well with red meat when it's really tanniny. So the tannins in the red wine will actually cut the fattiness of the steak, which brings out more of the flavor. And then the fattiness on the steak or in the cheese will soften the tannins. So again, it's softening the tannins, like aerating, like leaving it out, like aging it, just mellows it, blends it a little better. So that's why some reds, that you can't drink them alone. You're like, ooh, this is good, but like it's making me hungrier. Ooh, it's a little heavy. But when you pair it with that meal, you're all of a sudden drinking it, knocking it back. And it's because they actually are working together and they're bringing out better flavors in the food and the wine. Oh, I'm making myself hungry. So yes, that is why red wine with red meat, but that would mean something like this more Vedra, pair with like a nice thick cut of meat. Versus a Pinot Noir or even that Barbera, you're not gonna go so fatty, right? We talked about like the tomato pasta dish. Maybe you'd do like duck or lamb, but you're gonna save your heavy fatty foods for these higher tannin red wines. So yeah, more Vedra, again, to compare to something more similar to a Cabernet Sauvignon. If you're a Pinot Noir drinker, you're probably like, this is too much. This is pretty far down the spectrum from a Pinot Noir. All right, we're gonna go to our last wine now. We are ending on our Balance of Powers Suzhou. Wonder if anyone's heard of that one. And yes, we're staying above 15% alcohol. No rest for the weary here, y'all. So here we go, Suzhou, pretty funky grape. Again, this was Central Valley, California, but it's a Portuguese grape. So it's grown in Porto. And this one, let's see, give it a smell. This one really reminds me of something else. I'm gonna tell you in a minute, but I'm gonna make you think about it for a second. So when I smell it, give it some swirls, it really reminds me of another alcoholic drink. Reminds me of port. That sweetness. And that's because this grape is used to make port. Portuguese grape, grown in Porto. This is one of the grapes they use to make port. So if you're any wine drinkers here, not wine drinkers, we're all wine drinkers here, I hope. Any port drinkers here, this might be triggering. And I was like, oh, I recognize this because I've drunk some port. So yeah, this is not a well-known grape. People joke it's the most delicious grape you've never heard of, but what you're gonna be getting here, I smell a lot of dried raisins. So you're getting that fruitiness, but like dried fruitiness. Some wood, you're getting that kind of oak barrel smell. It's very intense flavors. Licorice. When I ask about the port, and I want people to say port, sometimes people will smell and be like, it smells like Jägermeister. I'm like, actually, that's a pretty good guess too, because you get that licorice in this. Yeah, this is a big wine for us to end on.